This is a river, the veins of the environment. It peacefully babbles across rocks, meandering and weaving through the lives of people before rejoining the body of the surrounding ocean and sea. But what happens when this river begins to rage? When its temperament is dramatically changed by a commanding storm and it joins this occupying force to battle and scrape its way to the coast, smashing, crushing, and claiming anything in its path. In the early morning of Thursday, August the 27th, Tropical Storm Erika emptied more than 12 inches of rain in a 12-hour period over the Commonwealth of Dominica, resulting in all 365 rivers breaking their banks. Massive flooding and several landslides engulfed the picturesque and eco-centered island.
Because when we woke up in the morning, all we could hear was a sound, like I was asking my wife, what is doing that thing there? She told me it's the river that coming over. I said, we never, so long I'm living here, I never heard a river making that noise. But Prince One lies between two rivers on top here, and we have a river in the valley there, and a river in the valley there, and other rivers across, streams coming down. You know? So the place was just shaking like this, like that. So we wondered what's happening. But the wind was not all that heavy for that. But after the wind was over, then we went out. As we went out, we were watching all over the place, and that was it. We were hearing this person calling on the other side. These houses are not there. That house is not there. That house is going down. You know, calling people. Then some people would run and help to take out things from it.
But about 4:45, the real thing started pouring. And it poured down, for that 3 to 4 hours. And then all of a sudden, because I live up there, I saw the river start up, and all of a sudden, the whole place was covered. And I thought, well, I was in Hollywood, right? And then water started coming down. And it just devastated the village.
Yeah.
Well, I lose my house. All the furniture in the house was mashed up. I lose my truck, my shop.
Yeah. 6 o'clock, we noticed that things was getting out of hand. So then what we tried to do, we tried to get the people on the other side to come across so easy access to move. And my kids were sleeping at my mom's home, and then I was on the other side on the street because I was up getting people. And then I just had a feeling something was going to happen. So I stayed on this side and I screamed, just leave the home, Mom, get out, get out. And then I noticed, as they step out, the slide just come down and take them.
So when it calmed down a little, then we cross on the other side for us to see if we can survive. Then while we there, some people, or Reynolds, some people come there and they tell us we have to go on the other side for us to see what we can do. Anyhow, we fight our battle and then we go, and then when we reach, we have to go down where the river eats up, we have to go down so, and for us to pass on the other side, and then for us to cross the big river. When we reach the big river, is there, we trap there, because it is heavy. We have to make hand chain for us to cross. When I see a young girl by the name of Miriam tell me they will come, when I go for me to give her my hand, I see I could not make it. I had to burst back, and then I go a little lower up. Then my daughter tell me, Mommy, come. Then I tell her, wait. I go a little higher up the other tree, then I hold it, then she hold me, and then I go. When I reach down, that's the end.
After the rains subside and the river is pacified, the true effects of the storm has to be assessed. This difficult task was tackled by emergency forces on the ground and Dominican leader Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerritt. Through this process, 9 villages were declared special disaster areas due to the loss of life, housing stock, and access. After this initial survey, Prime Minister Skerritt requested assistance from the regional and international communities.
Local, regional, and international agencies have already deployed representatives in the field to assess and evaluate damage and determine the nature of relief and assistance that will be forthcoming. In a nutshell, to all impacted by this tragedy, help is on the way.
Help was indeed on the way. Due to its proximity, Barbados was able to render assistance quite quickly through the Barbados Coast Guard.
That happened on, I think it was a Thursday.
Yeah.
On Thursday, and I was actually on an off day, and I was called back into work just about 1300 hours in the afternoon to start making preparations to render assistance once that assistance was asked for by the people of Dominica. So from the time it happened, we were sprung into action like almost immediately.
Barbados Coast Guard vessels shipped much needed technical equipment, supplies, and personnel from Barbados, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, St. Kitts and Nevis, and Antigua and Barbuda to Dominica. Crew members of the HMBS Trident and Barbadian journalists also took part in a rescue mission, transporting the residents of the severely affected Petit Savant to safety.
I want to say thank you to Barbados, for the government of Barbados, for sending those rescue missions, those boats to take us out, because that is the boat they used to take me out, my wife and other people. There was about 400 of us on board, and it was a long time waiting. We were complaining, not me, but some guys were complaining. They said they're tired and so on, because, you know, in the hot sun. But as we said, it's not we alone. We are the first that came in, but there are others on the shore that want to go, so they must take them out. And so everybody got rescued, and everything was done perfectly well. And so we cannot stop thanking the government of Barbados for helping Dominica in that sense, because the boats that were taking out the people was very small boats, and it was taking a long time. And anything had to happen, more people would have died. But because of that big one we had here, then everybody we moved together. So again, I want to say thank you to them.
The contingent from Barbados has been very helpful. They've been involved in the evacuation exercise. We use their personnel and also the vessel to help transport the evacuees from Petit Savant, from Scottsdale area into the city. The men have been used in different aspects of the recovery effort. So I consider that they've been extremely helpful. They've given some added hands to the already stretched police force of Dominica. Because, as you know, the police is engaged in a number of activities, search and rescue, ensuring that there's security for the areas affected and for the whole country. And so the Barbados government have been very helpful in that regard, in terms of its immediate assistance in the search and rescue effort. Obviously, in the longer run, in terms of reconstruction, then we will look at this. The community of Barbados have also been very helpful in sending supplies to us from various groups and individuals and business houses. We've had owner of a boat come in here free of charge to bring in the supplies. There's a second boat coming from Barbados, I believe, tomorrow. They are coming from Barbados with supplies and then going down to St. Vincent to pick up some Bailey bridges for us. because we're seeking to erect a couple of bailey bridges as quickly as possible. Temporary bridges, but nonetheless much safer than what we know we utilized especially on the west coast of Dominica. But so they've been very helpful.
Medical services are also a part of the Barbados Defense Force's role. After a natural disaster, medical care switches to a field hospital situation, calling for particular management skills. Dr. Brian Charles, reservist in the BDF's Medical Corps, added his knowledge in this area to support personnel on the ground.
We have to make several assessments in terms of resources available, resources that are needed. We have to make assessments in terms of infrastructure that are needed to provide medical and possible medical disaster management, and whether or not the communities have access to these facilities that are currently in place, and what we can do to assist to help them to get those facilities improved. Now, there are several types of disasters that would impact on what medical arrangements you make. If there are disasters that cause massive personal injury, earthquakes like the Haiti earthquake before, then we know that there's going to be a lot of need for a good field hospital, a good source of personnel who can manage emergencies and trauma and surgery. For weather-related disasters, hurricanes, storms, floods, it's usually not much in terms of medical, and in a day or two, usually the local resources should be able to manage. The problem comes when you have isolation of different communities, where getting to those persons could prove difficult. Where finding out what they need could prove difficult. So you have to go in with a mindset that, thinking that, look, all may be well without much of need for medical disaster management, or be open to say, well, look, there may be one or two communities who have been isolated and who do need to be facilitated in terms of provision of medical personnel, medical supplies, and then transitioning from that into a normal civilian role for their medicines.
Further to the involvement of the Barbados Defense Force, Prime Minister of Barbados, Frandel Stewart, in his role as chairman of CARICOM, dispatched the services of the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency, CDEMA. Their presence strengthened the National Emergency Office in Dominica.
CDEMA's first role is really to go in and support that local team to help with the local efforts. You would expect, for example, the local disaster manager would have had quite a bit more than he would normally have to do, and possibly affected as well, or relatives affected, so they may need to be relieved or supported. And you have as well many agencies coming in, or groups coming in to try support, and there needs to be some decent coordination. And CDEMA's aim is really to coordinate everything like that with the government of Dominica.
Deployment of the Regional Security System, RSS, was another Caribbean-wide response to Dominica's call for help. 75 troops from the Antigua and Barbuda Defense Force and Coast Guard, the Barbados Coast Guard and the Police Force, and the police forces from St. Kitts and Nevis and St. Vincent and the Grenadines traveled to Dominica to support the local police force.
In accordance with the treaty, we are here to support the Commonwealth of Dominica Police Force. So basically what we are doing right now is we are providing personnel to do security at various locations. What that allows the Commonwealth of Dominica Police Force to do is really get out and be able to cover a lot of the devastated areas, as well as from time to time also allow them to get some rest, because they've been working extremely hard since the disaster happened.
Most of the teams are basically made of artisans. We have plumbers, carpenters, welders, electricians. So once the other member forces from the other islands come on board, Once we ascertain their qualifications, then we will be able to work and produce within those capabilities.
Much of the assistance was needed to reopen the main Douglas Charles Airport in Melville Hall. Floodwaters caused by the storm came crashing through the airport, bringing several feet of mud and debris. There was damage to taxi lanes and the runway was completely submerged. It was a race against the clock to remove the water, redirect the river, and bring the airport back to a basic working order. The faster the airport is cleared for flights, the easier it is to receive personnel and relief supplies. Dr. David Farrell from the Caribbean Institute for Meteorology and Hydrology, a regional entity headquartered in Barbados, was quick to provide technical support and assistance.
We already have one person on the ground who has been working to help reestablish the Met service in Dominica, which is essential for flights coming into and out of Dominica. So to reestablish the air link to Dominica for large aircraft to come in at the airports, in particular Melville Hall. So we've been working on that at the moment. Specifically, when I get there, we'll make sure that everything is working. We'll look at the early warning system as well, because we have put in most of the early warning systems, or part of it anyways, in Dominica. We'll look at those stations, make sure the stations are working and functioning properly. The ones that have got some damage, we'll try to repair if we can, and try to get that whole network up and running and transmitting again. We'll also work with some of the teams on the ground looking at stability, geological stability and geological hazards, and how those may have changed over time.
However, much of the task of reopening the airport fell to Benoit Badoui, and with the help from local volunteers and construction workers. His to-do list was long, but the job had to be completed in order to re-establish one of the main channels into Dominica.
We had to assess whether the runway was usable and whether the terminal was, in fact, what level of damage it suffered, so that we could seek to find a way to rehabilitate it. In doing the assessments, we also realized that because the river had breached and overflowed its banks, that we had to stop that river flow, because it continued to do damage to the one taxiway that appears to have been saved. And so we had to quickly do that and put in as many of our people as possible from a logistical standpoint to work on different areas. The terminal, to remove the debris. So we had to get chainsaw operators, bulldozers and front-end loaders. We had to get excavators to do what we could to bring the place to some area where a proper assessment could be done. Based on the assessments, we realized that the structure itself of the airport terminal may not have suffered any severe structural damage based on what the engineers are saying. However, all the internal parts of the lower floors of the airport, in terms of the equipment, was completely damaged. And so it is a mammoth task to be able to once again put that together. But nonetheless, we went ahead with the cleaning crews. And we were very thankful in the terms that we found that we got assistance through the Venezuelan government, through CAMA, and through the French, through the Région de Guadeloupe. The Regional Council of Guadeloupe sent quite a bit of equipment to us, and that we were able to begin the process of trying to recapture the apron. And as you can see now, we've in fact cleared all the apron. We've cleaned up the buildings, taken out tons of mud and silt within the building. We've cut up many trees as possible that we could get, and we've cutted the material away. The engineers have started the diversion course for the river back to its original course. and they are in fact putting a temporary boom in terms of trying to ensure that if we have heavy rains that it will not repeat. However, they are still putting on the drawing board a long-term solution so that in the event we were to have a large volume of water such as this, or even more, that it would not affect the airport as it did now.
Also key to the rebuilding process is securing water supplies. Flood waters contaminate drinkable water with parasites and pollutants. This can cause health issues such as acute diarrhea, gastroenteritis, and hepatitis A. Therefore, keeping the water supply safe and educating the public on proper water hygiene is paramount. This is where Adrianus Dunvugman, water, sanitation, and environmental specialist from the Pan American Health Organization, comes in to lend a helping hand to the Ministry of Health in Dominica.
First, we are going to deliver some supplies that our organization is donating to the Ministry of Health, medical supplies. We have laptops, computers, also communication equipment, Motorola handheld radios, foggers from vector control, water testing kits. We will deliver them first, and then I will look mostly at the water supply situation to ensure that the re-establishment of the water supply is as fast as possible. We're looking at, of course, water quality, and also what people can do in the meantime before water supply has been reconnected with regards to rainwater catchment. We're looking at that to guarantee a safe supply of potable water. We will also do health promotion issues and messages with regards to safe water and also sanitation and hygiene. And that will be a major concern in the conditions that people have to live in now. And we will look at the several aspects and go out in the community with our counterparts and other agencies to get the right message across to the people and make sure that we prevent the outbreak of communicable diseases.
Bringing normalcy back to Dominica will pull on its already fully stretched resources. Therefore, financial injections must come from personal donations, other Caribbean nations, non-governmental and international agencies. Barbadian Prime Minister Frandel Stewart, after touring the hardest hit areas, acknowledged this reality and pledged financial support to help rebuild Dominica.
We are vulnerable countries, and as I said in Barbados 2 weekends ago, when Hurricane Katrina happened in the United States of America, and more recently Hurricane Sandy, these were local events in the United States. They did not affect the functioning of the United States as a country. But when you have a hurricane in any of these CARICOM countries, they're not local events, they're national events. They affect every aspect of life across the country. And they force governments to go back to the drawing board in terms of their priorities, how they're going to spend, how they have to budget, and so on. And I want to congratulate SEDIMA for the role it has played ever since this tragedy struck here in Dominica. I'm aware that it has done an enormous amount of work and has been trying to do some goal setting for countries in CARICOM. I think one of the goals that has been set for member states of CARICOM is that each should contemplate a contribution of about $100,000 to this effort. Well, for a start, of course, but I just want to make it very clear that having received that information, I gave instructions to the Minister of Finance of Barbados that that $100,000 should be made available to Dominica as soon as possible. And of course, we will put all the machinery in place necessary to ensure that that money is received in this country post haste, because we recognize that this is money that is needed to try to get this country back on its feet and to get some normalcy restored to the lives of our people.
Life after the storm is never easy. Despite all outside efforts, the rebuilding process has to begin with people working together to recreate their community. It is that unbreakable resolve that reconstructs a nation.
It's not easy. It is hard. Sometimes I cry. It is hard. But I have to be strong for my guys, so then we're trying to keep the faith.
We just one day at a time. One day at a time. Just have to thank God for what happened. It could have been worse, but God knows best. Huh? As the Bible says, in everything give thanks. That's what we can do. There's nothing else we can do. In everything give thanks.
Tell you, when I watch, I see death, because there is no way you could go anywhere. Yes, but God help us, and we are soldiers of the Lord, and we survive. Yeah.
Now the river is tamed. It has returned to its path, winding and journeying once again through the lives of the Dominican people. Its nurturing presence, a reminder of the dynamic, ever-changing, and always moving current of life. To find out more on how you can continue to donate to the Help Dominica cause, visit www.opm.gov.dm. Also visit our YouTube channel for pictures and more interviews from Dominica.